Jim Rogers is the famous investor, author, and world traveler. He has done not one, but 2 round-the-world trips and gotten himself into the Guinness Book of World Records 3 times because of these incredible trips. He co-founded the Quantum Fund, which was one of the most successful hedge funds ever, and he was able to retire at the age of 37. Who does not dream about retiring at the age of 37? He is brilliant and one of the few investing geniuses in our modern existence. He moved his family to Singapore in 2007 because he wanted to give his daughters the best chances possible of creating success in their lives. He speaks all over the globe about economics, investing, politics, society, and adventure. And he is the best-selling author with 6 books under his belt. Jeff, thank you so much for being with the Freedom Friend. This is an honor for me because you've been one of my mentors for years. And I know you didn't know that because we didn't know each other then. But when I started my journey with Austrian economics and learning about how everything that I care about in my life is completely affected by our economy, and then it's affected by the politics by which our politicians try to control the economy. So reading your books has been a huge light bulb in my life. So just thank you for being here. It's an honor. It's a blessing. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with all of us.
I'm delighted to be here. Glad we finally met.
I know, me too. Okay. So first off, I mentioned earlier that you moved to Singapore in 2007 for your daughters. So can you explain to us a little bit about why Singapore and why not America?
Well, in my view, Asia is going to be the most important part of the world in the 21st century, whether we like it or not, and China will be the most important country in the 21st century. So I wanted my daughters to grow up knowing Mandarin and knowing Asia. The only way I could do that, I couldn't teach them Mandarin in New York. I could teach them Mandarin in New York, but it wouldn't really develop, and they certainly couldn't know Asia in New York. So we looked around to find a Chinese-speaking city. We looked at the ones in China, but the ones where we wanted to live are too horribly polluted. I mean, they're just filthy. So we couldn't bring ourselves to live in China. Singapore is great. I mean, it's an unbelievably successful country. They speak Mandarin, they speak English. Everything works. It's got great health care, great education, so here we are.
Why do you think Singapore has all this success? Because a few decades ago, it was a third world country.
It was indeed. It was a swamp, according to them, with just a few 100,000 people. The main reason is discipline, and the government forced people to save, and when you have a high savings rate, that's a very important ingredient to develop a successful economy. At one point, the savings rate in Singapore was over 40%, if you can believe that. So with a high rate of savings and investing, and disciplined labor, disciplined everything, disciplined education, we put a huge emphasis on education. There are many ingredients that went into making Singapore a success. It worked.
Do you think, well, now you said force. What is your opinion on that? Because I think a lot of Americans would feel uncomfortable with the word.
I agree. I certainly am not in favor of forcing anybody to do anything.
Right.
The less the better, including paying taxes. Right. We have to do all these things. But if nothing else, the results are spectacular. It's been the most successful country in the past 40 years. I know lots of places that force people to do things and have nothing to show for it except decline. I mean, look at the Congo. I mean, the Congo had a dictatorship. They had nothing to show for it 40 years later. Singapore forced people to do a lot of things, and it's been a wild success. America forces a lot of people to do things, and we're in decline. So, yes and no. I'd rather have, if I have to have force, I would like to have successful force. If I've got to have force that's not successful, I'm not very pleased with it.
Well, do you think that part of the reason the force worked with Singapore right now is because they had leaders who were intelligent and wanted free market capitalism, understood that money coming into the country was healthy for the economy? And could you ever see that power being in the hands of people who are making the opposite decision?
No. Most of the people who run governments are not successful. They're not very smart people. And most dictators, for instance, are not very. They're just after power, and power corrupts. I'm not the first person to know that power corrupts. So most governments are corrupted and corrode the system, and it's not a very good system at all. But at least this one worked. I'm not saying it was, listen, they made lots of mistakes as far as I'm concerned. Lots of the things they did were pretty horrendous. But my only point was there are many countries that have gotten rid of these things and have not had anything to show for it, at least from this one, with all of its horrendous things, if they were horrendous, have been a great success.
Yeah. Okay, so for all the parents in America, would you suggest, is that a very extreme thing that for people to think of, or do you think this is something that your typical American family should consider?
Moving to Singapore?
Moving to another country for the benefit of their family in the future?
Well, I've known a lot of parents in my day, and I've heard parents do many, many things for their children. They move to where there's a good football coach, they move to where there's a good school, they move to where there's a great music teacher. People do a lot. Now that I'm a parent especially, I know that people do a lot of strange things for their parents. I'm not going to tell anybody else how to raise their children by any stretch of the imagination. But for me, it was important that my children know Asian and that they speak fluent Mandarin. It's not going to make them successful, Michelle. I mean, when they grow up, just because they speak Mandarin and English, they could be working in a restaurant. But at least, if they're working in a restaurant, they'll be a maitre d', they won't be a dishwasher.
So it gives them a leg up.
It gives them a great leg up, yes.
So if you didn't have children, would you have stayed in America?
Well, that's an interesting question. I did stay in America for many years, decades before I had children. I look back and I wonder why I didn't leave. Well, I wonder why I didn't leave early. But I realized that decades ago, China and Asia were on the rise. And then I say, listen, I love New York, I love America. But looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight, you wonder, why didn't I leave sooner? Why didn't I come to Asia sooner? This is where things have been skyrocketing for a few decades, and the West has been going into decline for a few decades. My forebears left their comfortable existence. Your forebears left their comfortable existence. Everybody watching this show, forebears. There are very, very, very few people who did leave somewhere to wind up in America.
So that's an interesting point, because you say our forebears left what was comfortable to go to another country. I know my mom is from Malaysia, my dad's from Russia and Poland. I know that they definitely did not leave comfort to explore America, because for them they were leaving discomfort. And I know that my grandparents before that, it was the same deal. Like they were leaving discomfort to go to a country with opportunity. So
when I said comfort, I meant
like
knew
what
the
they
language, they knew the people, they knew the family, they knew the food, they knew the environment. I mean the comfort in that sense. It's difficult to leave anywhere. Being an immigrant takes a certain mindset. You've got to have ambition, you've got to have drive, you've got to have guts. It takes a lot of bravery to leave what you know, and most people do not leave what they know. But the people who do leave and go to a new place are usually the kind of people you want to attract. That's one reason America became so great. We had all these people like your forebears and mine and everybody else's forebears who had the ambition and the drive and the brains and the bravery to go somewhere new. That's not easy. I assure you, that's not easy, and that's why most people don't do it. But it's also accurate that many of the people who do have those characteristics wind up being successful in a new place.
So do you think America has gotten to a point where a lot of people are seeking that, or do you think it's still a very small number? Because I think in terms of lifestyle in America, even though there's a lot of unemployment, our economy is suffering, but the lifestyle in America, like the average American still has a house, still has cars. Like I myself here in Singapore can't afford a car, whereas I have 2 cars in America. So I find that even though the economy is better here, things are very expensive, it's difficult for me to have the same sort of lifestyle that I had in America here?
Well, there are trade-offs. There's some things that are unbelievably cheap here, wildly cheap,